basically a kid, I got it locked into my head that there's a very good general number for tire pressure in a car when you don't necessarily know any better, anything specific by the manufacturer, if you will, and that's a 34. And I just sort of have always kept it in my mind, you know, hey, if you don't know any different, you know, 34 pounds. And so that's what I did with the notchback when I got it, 34 pounds. And never really thought too much about it, but the other day I was fumbling around on the Samba looking at owner's manuals and stuff, and I forget exactly where I found it now, but somewhere I saw where it showed the recommended tire pressure, and when I saw the numbers I was like, wait a second, that is like so far off what I would, you know, normally expect. And so I kind of meant to go back and figure that out at some point, and I did that today. Kind of just looked at some general discussions in the Type 3 forum specifically on the Samba, and there's a few different numbers. You know, some guy said from the 71 manual that the fastback and the notchback was like, I want to say 17 in the front and 28 in the rear or something like that, or if it's a full load, it's, you know, closer to 20 and 30, and that was after already seeing somebody else say, you know, just sort of general rule for Type 3, you know, 20 in the front, 30 in the rear. Squareback is a little different, you know, because it was meant to be a, you know, sort of a cargo hauler, if you will. And so I forget what those numbers were. They were slightly higher, especially at least in the rear. But so I've made those changes today. I, you know, dropped my 34 pounds down to 20 in the front and 30 in the rear. And this is the maiden drive with the new tire pressure. And I'm just interested to see what kind of difference it's going to make. Unfortunately, I'm also driving with my carburetors really not awesome, and my throttle link or throttle cable still needing some improvement, and so I'm kind of fumbling a little bit to talk and drive at the same time. Anyway, so far it feels fine. It'll take me a little while to know if it's necessarily better or worse. I'm sure it'll probably only be better. So as I continue to drive, I reached this certain section of a street where a lot of people like to drive a little faster than you're technically supposed to, and I see this really beautiful car on a trailer, and I'm like, man, I've got to go see that. And wound up getting up to my, you know, sort of loose max speed of like 65 miles an hour. And as I'm doing that, I'm also in this curve, and I've done that curve in this car at a similar speed, and I believe that the lower tire pressure that I'm running is maybe it was better. Maybe that was a little better handling as I was going through there. And then after that, to get to Aaron's shop, there's a point where I cross over railroad tracks, and my lower ball joints are no bueno. And, you know, every time you hit any kind of bump or anything, you're always hearing it. It's really awful. It makes lots of noise. I mean, in my mind. And when I went over that railroad track, I can swear that it was less noise than I'm used to hearing. So far, I am leaning toward, yes, the lower tire pressure is definitely an advantage, and at this time, no negative side effects from it. So hopefully I will still feel that way as time goes on. So I find myself again going down this dirt road that I need to take to get to my father-in-law's shop. And so I was just out here recently in the car before having changed the tire pressure, and my God, I just felt like, you know, the car was going to rattle to pieces, and I really was not very happy about doing anything more than about 20 miles an hour, and that, you know, even at 20 I was just hating it. And I came out here earlier, there were times I was up at nearly 30 miles an hour, and you know, yeah, you're still on a dirt road, you know, you feel all the stuff, but no question, you know, that the lower tire pressure is, you know, acting a little bit like a shock absorber, and keeping some of that stuff from smacking around those awful lower ball joints that are pretty much totally shot. So I'm loving it, man. Yeah, tire pressure, really glad I made that repair, you know, if you want to call it that. Guy's feeding some cows.
But of course, it wasn't good enough for me to just read what other people said they read in the manual. I went ahead and downloaded the August 1963 Model 1500 manual and had a look for myself. If you have a Type 3 and haven't yet downloaded the user manual, I would suggest you do so. There's a bunch of good information in here, never mind the nostalgia factor. And so here you can see what they refer to as the variant, with a half payload shows 17 psi in the front, 24 in the rear, but if you have a full payload, 17 in the front and 36 in the rear, which actually is also kind of confusing when you read the words to the left of that chart where it says when the car is fully loaded or when driving fast on long journeys, the front tire pressure should be 17 psi and 24 in the rear. Either way, I'm generally driving alone, sometimes maybe with one passenger, and so I chose to go with 24 in the rear and 20 in the front. I did drop down to 17 in the front for a while, but while I'm not Johnny Dragster in this car, I was hearing quite a bit of squealing in turns. I generally run 21 or 22 pounds in my mountain bike tires. Any lower than that, and I hear the rims smack the trail from time to time. Plus, I did no research on how different tires were in the mid-1960s versus now. Maybe modern tires aren't supposed to run that low.
So I've just checked again, and I'm running 24 in my rear and 20 psi in the front tires, as it has been for some time now, and been driving the car around a while, and it's definitely riding a lot better than it did before, and I think this is my tire pressure. I think this is where I'm going to stay.